This young man, in order to sell himself to afford his father's burial, carried his father's corpse barefoot through dozens of small towns. Arriving at the Barefoot Casino, the richest gambling house under the heavens. For a year and a half, personal freedom was sold to the other party at a price. And on the spot, he made a vow: in 5 years Suhan would live solely for himself. However, the moment he was thrown into the cabin, just realized this world-famous gambling house known far and wide. Nearsighted, the #1 assassin organization in the underworld, Saluo's shop, a secret training base for cultivating killers. Suhan, to survive, I have no choice but to become stronger. Day and night, tirelessly honing your skills. But still couldn't escape the drill instructor's scolding and whipping. Until this day, a newcomer named Lu Xing appeared. That was the turning point that completely changed his life. Together, they fought off enemies, their skills growing stronger by the day. Before long, you became one of the top performers in your group. And what awaits them is an even more brutal trial. In the dead of night, Xu Huan and the group were sent to the ancient forest for a trial. Suddenly, I realized that in the distance, a demon was crouched down, carving up human flesh for food. Who would have thought? The bald guy leading the pack had the audacity to declare. Just a mere female demon, master, I, with a mere flick of my wrist, can claim her head. But she didn't even let the man finish speaking. That shiny bald head was plucked off barehanded by the evil sorcerer, savoring the pleasure that comes with the taste of fresh blood. With a quick response, Lu Xing shouted, "Run for it!" But the guy who came after got the short end of the stick. Suddenly, during the break, the demon teacher beheaded him. Meanwhile, Su and Han seized the opportunity to desperately flee for their lives. Not until he reached a dead end did he stop in his tracks. Just as Su Han breathed a sigh of relief, the demon sorcerer suddenly leapt with a bang, landing right behind the two of them. Seeing this situation, the two could only fight to the death. But how could an apprentice from a small town training camp possibly be a match for him? Just a single pack of instant noodles. If she were to look for someone, she'd ditch Lu in a heartbeat. Then, baring its fangs, it lunged at Su Han. Right at this critical moment, Lu Xing, wielding a knife from behind, leapt forward, driving the blade deep into the back of the demon master. But this blow didn't strike a vital spot. Instead, it completely infuriated the other person. His eyes gleamed with a saintly red hue, making him all the more terrifying. The crazed demon master, bellowing, charged at Lu Xing. Her hands clung tightly to Lu Xing's chest. Wants to gobble Lu Xing up in one bite. Seeing a comrade in arms in imminent danger, Su Heng recalled the key points of martial arts training. He leapt into the air, circling to the back in a flying bound. He plunged the long blade straight into the back of the enemy's soaked head. Yet, surprisingly, this thing has such a tenacious will to live. If the enemy lies within, then one must fight a battle with fate itself. Su Han employed all the skills he had mastered throughout his life. With both hands wielding the blade, he beheaded it. Afterward, the demon collapsed to the ground with a fitting thud, completely unable to rise again. The crisis temporarily averted, the two looked up at the sky. Su Han was reminded of the girl who gave him steamed buns on the street back in the day. If I'm still alive in 5 years and have gained my freedom, I'll go find him immediately. But just as they were dreaming and teasing each other, a drenched young man suddenly appeared. He mumbled hesitantly, indicating that it was dark, he was lost, and he wanted to borrow a light. Without a prior introduction, they warmly greeted each other, exchanging pleasantries. Little did anyone know, as soon as the young man approached the fire pit, he swung the cloth bag in his hand, knocking over the fire pit. A fresh, severed head slowly rolled out. And Lu Xing, unable to dodge in time, was accidentally struck by the charcoal fire, leaving his eyes unable to move. I'm sorry, but the text you've provided seems to be a string of names or terms that may not have a direct or coherent translation in English, especially in a cultural or literary context. These could be names of historical figures, literary characters, or terms from a story, poem, or novel in Chinese literature. Without additional context, it's challenging to provide an accurate and idiomatic translation. Could you provide more information or context for these terms? As a result, he himself was caught off guard by the young man's sneak attack, as a blade brutally pierced through Su Han's chest. Immediately after, a surge of blood spurted from the depths of his heart. Upon learning that his good friend Lu had been harmed, he was immediately consumed by rage. Ash path, clashing swords alongside my partner. Who would have thought? This scrawny kid turns out to be terrifyingly powerful. Lu Xing's killer moves were all easily dodged with a swift sidestep, and then, a blade struck deep into Lu Xing's left shoulder. The blade kept swinging back and forth in the wound. The young man wore a playful look, uttering disdainfully, "These demon sorcerers are the eliminators of the trial. They transform into the everyday food we eat, mixed with a demon-infused pill. If the trial isn't completed within 15 days, everyone will be bewitched by the demon aura that pervades this place." Having said that, the young man completely lost his sanity. All he needed was to kill one more person to complete the trial. But this Su and Lu duo, taking off, is just out of this world. Just as the young man was about to dig in with an eager expression on his face, the knife in his hand was gripped tightly by Lu Xing. No matter how hard he tried, the long sword wouldn't budge an inch. Now is the perfect moment for Su Han to make his move. A knife plunged straight through the young man's palm. The young man, in a fit of hysteria, wants to annihilate everyone. But Su and Lu aren't the type to be pushed around, they're no one's easy prey. With a single strike, the blade pierced straight through the young man's chest. Accompanied by a piercing, arrogant scream, the young Xing collapsed to the ground, completely lifeless. And at this moment Su Han, having weathered calamities, has fallen and can't get up. He ordered Lu Xing to return with 10 heads to report back. But how could Lu Xing do something as despicable as betraying trust? He pondered, reflecting on the signal that represents passing through the trials of his peers. Jiangxing left his hopes to his close friend, Su Han. Meanwhile, I walked alone into the depths of the ancient forest. Shortly after, several cloaked elders swiftly arrived on scene. Looking at the unconscious Su Han before her, and the ample number of severed heads. Among them, an elderly man pulled out a register from his bosom. It was exactly the certification of Su Han's transformation into a Shura shop assassin. And at this moment, these old men surely can't imagine that this dying young man before them is destined to be the key figure who will shake the world to its core in the future. Years later, 3 young assassins stealthily crept into the governor's bedroom. And there he was, a man on his knees, stripped of the will to resist. This passage comes from a classic Chinese context and contains elements that are culturally specific. Translating it into American English while maintaining its original flavor and implications can be challenging. Here's an attempt to capture the essence in American English. The governor of this city throws a banquet for Guanshan. Seeing him with a defiant face, he goes from execute and flay to listen to your esteemed defense. This translation aims to preserve the original context and the change in attitude of the city governor while adapting it to a more accessible form of American English. But how could this masked youth at the forefront be like his shadow? He snorted coldly in response. The assassin behind him then used his wife and child as leverage. Then, the masked youth threatened. San Lu, your highness, come on, it's always wise to eliminate the root when cutting the grass. It would be prudent, governor, to attend to such matters more diligently. Captured by Governor Lu upon encountering his wife, he struggled, unable to resist, as his inner defenses were utterly shattered. Kneeling on the ground, he expressed his defeat with a sense of helplessness. I lay it all out. The leading Mongolian debater youth immediately raised his hand in a sweeping gesture. His wife and child returned to the arms of the governor, and at that moment, he had no more reservations in his heart. During the late-night tea gatherings, Supervisor Sun Lingnai would take a 10% cut, and the military governor, not only indulging in corruption for personal gain, but was also willing to beat and even kill the common people. As the governor of Yanguan, though tasked with overseeing a border territory, I, Shi Junlu, am surely not without worries over military affairs. The moment I became the scapegoat for the emperor, I never thought of living on. I can only despise that Gong Sun Ling, still living in disgrace, tormenting the people. It is my failure at Yen Pass, my ineptitude, that has let down the emperor's trust. Upon learning the reason behind it all, the young man spoke calmly. If that's the case, then I'll just have to let you two be. Suddenly, there was a loud thwack. 2 assassins quickly positioned themselves in front of Yanguan Mountain. Scalding blood splattered onto the man's cheeks. Yan Guanshan opened his eyes in disbelief, his face registering shock at the sight of the nearsighted assassin who had come to kill him, now decapitated and lying on the ground. And on the sword of the masked youth, hot, fresh blood was dripping. Then, turning to Yan Guanshan with a cold voice, he said, "Take your wife and children and leave this place at once. Never enter the world of officialdom again in your life. Uncovering the assassin before you is a matter of honor and justice." Yan Guanshan quickly embraced Quan with gratitude. So he took his wife and child, and fled into the night, seeking refuge in the seclusion of the mountains and forests. Subsequently, the masked youth immediately wrote a letter. In the letter, falsely claimed, the entire Yan Guanshan family has been wiped out, and Hong Yao's relatives and friends died in battle. Respectfully, Su Han. Then, with a blaze, they set the governor's mansion ablaze, lighting up the night sky. And the very next day, bright and early, that corrupt official, Gong Sun Ling, was hanged at the city gates. This is when Su Han suddenly received an urgent transfer order. 3. The magnificent Luo Palace, countless, grand, capable, wondrous, gathers life into the city. Life is unpredictable and full of uncertainties. Oxhead and Horseface. And the store owner's trusted associates, Red One and the Arbiter. But oddly enough, the target of the assassination wasn't revealed. Instead, there was just a reminder for everyone to be vigilant and cautious, and not to draw attention to themselves. Afterward, the Purple Robe Gajura dismissed the crowd, letting everyone disperse on their own. But the shrewd Su Han had a thought. Immediately reached out to the Purple Robe Gajura for information. Originally, it was upon meeting a genius that the vast sea unfolded into the present-day Jingxing city. 30 years ago, someone stole a dozen peerless divine swords from the Forest of Swords, leading to a 30-year manhunt by the martial artists of the Great Zhou dynasty. But because his rates are so steep, to this day no one has been able to afford Sir Remittance services. But recently, someone has been loudly proclaiming their intention to take down Shanghai Lu. This person was none other than one of the 8 esteemed elders of the Linglong Pavilion, the mysterious sword immortal, Long Tsongyun. And this time, the goal of Saluo Hall was to eliminate Long Tsongyun before Shanghai Lu could act, and ultimately to throw the dirty water on Shanghai Lu. This way, there's no need to offend the Great Zhou's #1 sect, and we can subtly undermine the power of the Linglong Pavilion. Su Han finally understood the purpose behind the gathering of the great powers here. To my surprise, the Shizipo Azura suddenly spoke in a chilling tone. The 10 halls Yenluo place great importance on this plan. You must not take matters into your own hands as you have in the past. This time, everyone must be annihilated, no survivors left. Su Han looked shocked and said, "My lord, knowing that I secretly released the captives from Yanguan Mountain, why did you cover for me and keep it hidden without reporting it?" Ashura snorted coldly. "Between you and me, there's no ill will. Remember, just follow my commands and that will suffice." After that, he vanished into the darkness. And Su Han, already tired of living on tenterhooks, began to yearn for the life of freedom that awaited him a year from now. We need to find Aixing's younger brother and sister. And that girl who brought him steamed buns. But twists of fate always come more unexpectedly than any plan. The mission to assassinate Long Songyun is set to commence soon. Su-han and his group were in charge of strangling the favored daughters of Linglong Pavilion. The dozens of guards inside the room were all slain in the blink of an eye. But in the crowd, the one person missing is the target of this mission. Afterwards, with a mighty leap, Su-han landed on the attic above. Immediately after, he kicked the door open with a single powerful blow. Start searching every nook and cranny where someone might be hiding. And behind the wall, the girl with white hair trembled, covering her mouth and nose, trying to silence herself. As it turned out, this trick actually worked, and Huxuan didn't catch on. But just as he was getting ready to leave, the girl suddenly relaxed and let out a sigh of relief. The subtle fluctuations of breath were quickly captured by Su-han. So, leaning over to draw my sword, I went straight for a bug report. In a gasp, he quickly grabbed the girl by the throat. He effortlessly hoisted it into midair, leaving it completely immobilized. But when he got a clear look at the other person's face, he was stunned. Turns out, it's the very girl with the buns he's been pining for. In a fit of excitement, he gave a cold hiss and, with a swift motion, slammed it to the ground. Get out now. But at that moment, another assassin suddenly appeared behind him. Without a second thought, she transformed into a girl with white hair and lunged forward. However, the tip of the knife suddenly stopped right in front of the girl's face. Because Su-han, from behind, delivered a stab that pierced through his neck. He executed the move in one fluid motion. Upon receiving the ball, his head faked, and then he drove to the basket for the score. Following that, he grabbed the girl's arm tightly. He straight up threw the fair-skinned and beautiful young lady out. Fortunately, the girl's light-footed skills were quite impressive. With a graceful spin, he catches his coat, executes a skillful roll, and lands perfectly. Downstairs, the ace hitman from Wansong spotted a fish that slipped through the net and immediately cornered the girl, trapping her in the center. Little did they know, their time left was a mere 2.5 seconds. Suddenly, Shuwan dove from the sky, hurling straight towards them. The assassin on the ground didn't even have time to react. Just like that, you watched yourself being erased with a single stroke. This was Su-han's first real rampage. The dense purple aura surrounding him made him seem particularly loathsome. And it was then that the other assassins realized there was a traitor in their midst and quickly came to provide backup. Upon hearing this, a group of men in black all turned towards Su-han and launched an attack on the two of them. Meanwhile, Su and Han, hidden in the shadows, narrowly escaped disaster for the moment. At this moment, the girl with white hair let out a long sigh. Finally safe. A single cold comment was all it took to make him tense up again. The Sanduo Hall has always been thorough in eliminating its enemies. Now is not the time to let down our guard. What? It's the Sanduo Hall? They want to kill me. Seeing the girl's worried face, Su-han patted her shoulder and said, "Don't be afraid, I'm here for you. I'll make sure you get out of the city safely." Yen and Ba vanished into the night. After a long overnight trek, Su-han finally shook off his pursuers and managed to escape to safety. This is a crow that has delivered a letter. After the assassination attempt at the Hall of Judgment failed, Sun Hai-lu stepped in and saved Long Songyun. You should hurry up, take your lover, and seek refuge with Sun Hai-lu. Never return to the Hall of Judgment again. The girl saw Su-han's arm bleeding from the wound. Instinctively, I pulled out a pill to stop his bleeding and provide relief. Okay, years as a hitman. Yet it made him instinctively assume a fighting stance. The girl spoke softly and slowly. I just want to take care of your wound for you. In a moment of dazed coldness, I finally regain my composure and say, I'm sorry, I can handle it myself. But sometimes, a girl will neglect her savior, the one who once saved her life, without a second thought. So, as he bandaged himself up, he began to recount his own story. I grew up in the renowned Linglong Pavilion and the lofty Xuanhe Peak, known for their medical expertise since my childhood. But why? Would I be hunted down just for leaving the mountain for the first time? And Su-han, at this moment, couldn't care less about what the other person was saying. He just glanced over a few times and his face flushed with embarrassment. I even have this uncontrollable urge to stroke his forehead. As a result, she suddenly started dressing up out of the blue. It's already been bandaged up. Avoid vigorous exercise and take care with medications to prevent the wound from reopening. And Shuan, at this moment, was like a child caught sneaking a snack, her face flushed with embarrassment that spread all the way to the tops of her thighs. At this moment, the girl seemed to have noticed something was off. So, he asked Su Heng why he had saved him. And Su-han simply spoke in a calm tone. I just wanted to save you, that's all. Yet regarding the characters of knowledge from past years, she remained unacquainted, and even told the girl that she need not feel any gratitude towards her. Having said that, he stood up, ready to leave. Soon, Su-han safely escorted the girl to the Linglong Pavilion. And to repay the debt of saving her life, the girl wants to help Su-han's family gain entry into Linglong Pavilion to avoid the retaliation from Sanduo Hall. But in response, I was met with a smile and a polite refusal. Done! Now, with the tragedy fresh, the girl once again made a plea for Su-han to leave his name or to remove his mask. But all I heard was Su-han frowning and saying coldly, No, knowing too much about matters related to the Sanduo Hall is of no benefit to you. Yet the girl remained undeterred, offering a deal with a resigned, hollow laugh. Tell me your name first, and then I'll take off the mask for you to see. Upon hearing this, the girl's eyes lit up. My name is Chin Kaching. Meanwhile, Su-han also took off his mask. But this sly move totally blindsided Kaching. Because beneath the mask, there's another mask. And after a brief confrontation between the two of them, Su-han thus bid a formal farewell to Kaching. Time flew by, and before long, it was the 7th day, at the border between Chongzhou and Shuzhou. Su-han was ambushed by a group of assassins from the Sanluo Hall. Thinking they had the upper hand with numbers, they wanted to make a move and take him down directly, but little did they know, this young man's strength was terrifyingly formidable. He issued a single command, and the front row pawns were instantly wiped out by him. But alas, the other side's numbers were simply too overwhelming. After several rounds of relentless effort, Su-han gradually began to show signs of weakness. At that moment, the boss gave the command. "Everyone jump in, just leave them breathing." Su-han, adhering to the principle of capturing the ringleader first to defeat the enemy, mustered all his strength and thrust towards the boss in the rear. Who knew, this guy actually grabbed the fitness equipment with his bare hands. No matter how hard Su-han tries to absorb, ponder, savor, and understand. And in that fleeting moment, the assassin behind him swung his blade, with a cry. "Embrace the lotus." Immediately after, Su-han's screams of agony echoed through the surroundings. His sword-wielding right hand was brutally severed by a single stroke. He was acutely aware that he was utterly powerless to resist. But when you look up, you notice an elderly man in a black robe approaching. With the last bit of consciousness he had, he spoke softly. Stay back, stay back. I'm in a no-win situation. I can't drag others down with me." However, mid-sentence, his vision went dark, and he passed out cold. And just as Su-han was about to be taken away, the robed elder suddenly spoke up. "In broad daylight, to engage in an act of overwhelming the few with numbers is to behave like a scoundrel." But the boss of the hitmen dismissed it with disdain. "Saluo Hall conducts its own affairs. I'd appreciate it if you didn't meddle in things that don't concern you." Little did they know, those 3 words stepped right on the old man's last nerve. I didn't even clearly see his move before he struck. Suddenly, everyone was cut down in chaos. And the old man just snorted in disdain. "A mere hall of judgment dares to dump this mess on my head."